Get started. So, welcome everybody. This is the first time that I'm running this, so expect a few hiccups, but I'm really happy to have everybody here that is here. So my name is Timothy Scott, or TJ Scott, as many of you know me, and I am an estate planning attorney. I've been doing estate planning since 2012 when I graduated from law school from the University of St. Thomas School of Law. I got my diplomas hung. The room is starting to feel a little bit more complete and settled. And you can see those behind me. So yeah, so I graduated in 2012 and I looked at the legal marketplace and I knew that I wanted to do good work helping people and especially working with people and not necessarily fighting all the time, but wanted to find an area where I could really work with people. And I found this area of estate planning and I just fell in love with it because it's really a problem-solving area of the law. It's working with people to come up with creative options and to solve problems. And so I worked at a small firm for about 3 years. And after 3 years, I actually left that small firm. I joined Thomson Reuters, which is a big educational publisher. And then just rolled out my own solo firm just last year. So this is a little bit new, but it's something that's new that I've been doing for quite a while, and it's something that that I understand well and that I'm really passionate about. So so that's a little bit about me. So let's talk a little bit about you. And really, the first question is, why did you come today? And if it's something that you want to share in the chat, I encourage you to do that. If it's something that you'd like to keep to yourself, that's okay too. One of the reasons that you might have come here today is that you're looking for assurance. You're looking for comfort that your family is going to be taken care of if something happened to you. And maybe you're looking for a way to protect your assets at your death. And you're looking for some kind of peace of mind over what's going to happen to your assets and who's going to receive them. Maybe you have concerns about estate taxes and you just want to make sure that your family doesn't have to, or that your estate doesn't have to pay a lot of estate taxes before your family is able to receive your money. And maybe you're concerned about yourself and receiving the care that you want and that you deserve when you're not able to voice those opinions. And that's definitely something that we're going to be talking about today. It's something that I know a lot of people have on their mind as coronavirus is going around right now. So we'll make sure to talk about that today. But really, whatever reason it is that brought you here today, just know that it's something that we're going to talk about. And if it's something that you feel like I haven't addressed fully enough, or if you have some questions about it, please bring those to me because I'd really like to know and I'd really like to answer them. So when was the last time that you reviewed your existing plan? Or if you don't have a plan, then what is the state's plan for you? Many people who have an existing plan probably recognize what's right here. It's the traditional experience of doing an estate plan is kind of planning for death. Typically, it's a one-time transactional sort of thing with an attorney where the attorney is going to give you some form documents. They're going to fill them out for you, give you some form documents and make sure that you get them executed the proper way. You come out of that experience, maybe you're going to avoid probate, maybe you'll avoid some estate taxes, but you're probably going to leave your assets to your heirs unprotected. You don't have any kind of guarantee of ongoing legal guidance or ongoing, advice about your estate plan and what it's going to do for you. And you also run the risk of potentially losing some of your assets to the Minnesota Department of Unclaimed Property. You're really left with that question of, will my plan work for my family when I need it to? And a lot of times the traditional estate planning model doesn't answer that very clearly. the type of planning that I do is different. And this is something that is really important to me. It's actually part of the reason that I left the small firm that I was working at, is that we were practicing a very traditional model of estate planning. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to give my clients more and make sure that they were fully engaged in the process and really understood everything and got something of value from the work that we were doing together. So planning with me is really planning for life. It's planning that's going to last your entire life, and it's also planning that that is about more than just your death. So planning with me, you're going to make informed, empowered decisions. You're going to find out ways to save your family thousands of dollars. We're going to make sure that your assets aren't lost upon your death. We're going to protect your family money from outsiders. And with me, you know that you'll be receiving a lifetime of the right legal and financial choices. You'll be able to make the right legal and financial choices. And also something that's really special to my heart is keeping your family out of court and conflict. That's really the thing that I want to do. I see myself as a peacemaker, and I want to help make peace in families so that they don't fall apart from conflict after my clients are gone. And your plan will work when your family needs it to. So this is the state's estate plan for you. If you don't have an estate plan already, even if you do have an estate plan, if you haven't updated it in a while, or if you haven't funded it properly, your estate is probably going to need to go through a court process called guardianship or probate. The court process after you pass away is called probate. Before you pass away, if somebody needs to be able to make decisions about your healthcare, it would be called guardianship, or if they need to be able to make decisions about your assets, it would be called conservatorship. But this is kind of what it looks like. It's a long and slow process, and it just kind of bleeds money all over the place, from attorneys' fees, executors' fees, appraisers' fees, all kinds of different fees all over the place. And the truth is that it's really not a lawsuit that you stand to gain anything from. It's a lawsuit that you have to file against yourself with your own money for the benefit of your creditors. And so that's why when you hear people talk about trying to avoid probate, the cost is really one of those big things that people want to avoid. Another thing is that probate is public. So this is the last will of Jackie Kennedy Onassis, and you can go on and find the wills of a lot of famous people: John Lennon, JFK Jr., Babe Ruth, Jerry Garcia. Probate is public, and you have to publish your will in probate in order to have it executed. And that means people can go online and find it and see it. And maybe that's not a big deal to you, but something that a lot of people don't think about is that there are predators out there. And if predators find out that someone that you love is going to be receiving a lot of money, it could make you concerned about your loved ones, or it certainly would make me concerned if my loved ones, or if predators found out that I was leaving my loved ones a lot of money. Another thing that's concerning about probate and not doing an estate plan is that your beneficiaries stand to receive assets outright and unprotected. And so that might mean, if you have minor children, that they're going to receive the assets at 18 or maybe 21 if there's something in place. But I know of former classmates who received an inheritance before they should have, and it didn't do them any favors. And I think a lot of us have heard stories about, lottery winners or people who are receiving inheritance that are outsized, and it might mean that they don't end up going to college until they're 30, or maybe they don't go to college at all, or maybe they get into drugs or something. It can be scary. Another thing is, if people are receiving assets outright, at least in Minnesota, if they put those assets into a joint bank account, all of a sudden those assets are mingled, and they become joint assets, which means if there's a divorce, even a week later, the divorcing spouse may take half of the inheritance, even though the inheritance wasn't really intended to be theirs to enjoy. So that's something that can be a big thing on people's mind, is that they want to be able to protect the assets from things like divorce, things like lawsuits. There are ways to do that, to protect the assets that you're passing to your kids. Another thing to consider is if you have minor children and you've made guardianship nominations, even in a will, those guardianship nominations may not be terribly effective. There was a case recently one of my mentors had to deal with. It was 2 parents and 3 sons, and they went on a vacation from California to Arizona. And while they were in Arizona, unfortunately, there was a car accident and both parents passed away. When the police were looking for somebody to get the kids to, unfortunately, they went to the person that the parents probably wouldn't have wanted the kids to go to. And by the time that it worked its way through the courts, it ended up that that was the person who got control of the kids and also got control of the assets that the parents had wanted to leave to the kids, and that they were concerned that this person might not steward in a good way. So there are other ways to do guardianship nominations. There's something that I do called a kids protection plan. And if you have minor children and you're concerned about that, please ask me about the kids protection plan. It's something I'm pretty passionate about, helping people protect their kids. So I promised that we would talk about healthcare directive and whether your healthcare directive will work when you need it. And this is something that, again, is on a lot of people's minds right now with coronavirus. And there are a lot of concerns about getting a healthcare directive done and getting it done in a way that will make it effective. This is actually something I think a lot of people can do on their own. I think this is something that's really possible to do yourself. And there is a form called 5 Wishes, and it's available online for free. And it's really something that I suggest that you explore. If you're interested in doing estate planning anyway, I will guide you through the process of making a healthcare directive anyway. But there are a couple things that you're able to do in a healthcare directive. For one, you're able to name a healthcare agent, somebody that you trust, somebody that you know, somebody that you love, somebody who understands your philosophy and your way of thinking, who is able to make healthcare decisions for you. And the doctors will look to that person and they will allow that person to make those types of decisions. The other thing that you can do is you can fill out something called a living will. And a living will detail exactly what it is that you want for your care. As I said, 5 Wishes has both in one document. Most often you find both in the same document, but you could also complete one or the other. It's up to you how you want to do it. But this is something that, as I said, you can do yourself. It needs to be executed with a notary or with 2 witnesses, but that's also very doable. The banks have notaries generally, and I know that Minnesota now has remote notarization. I haven't had a lot of luck finding a remote notary in Minnesota, but it's a possibility that you could find a remote notary in Minnesota and get it executed. So if you want more information about that, and you're just not interested in doing planning at this time, but you want more information about the healthcare directive, please feel free to just reach out to me and I'll help make sure that you get it done. Like I say, even if you're not interested in doing other planning. This person here is Terry Shivo. And Terry's case was really a tragic case because of the amount of fighting and the amount of conflict that was generated. It wasn't clear that Terry was still cognitively there, and her husband, who had become maybe a little bit estranged, wanted to pull the plug, wanted to call it and let Terry move on. But her parents didn't want that. And so there was a big fight between the husband and the parents. And like I say, it was a lot of conflict And it was conflict that could have been avoided if Terry had made it clear what her wants were, what her desires were in her living will. Her parents didn't contest the husband being named the healthcare agent at the time, but they did contest it later. And it's possible that Terry could have spelled out exactly what she wanted and reduce some of that conflict. Some common planning techniques that don't work. Owning property jointly. So a lot of people, when they first buy a house or whenever they buy a house, they take property jointly with right of survivorship. And that means that their spouse would receive the house free and clear if something should happen to them. Unfortunately, that doesn't account for if something happened to both of the owners of the house. And it doesn't help if you have minor children or something like that too, that you don't want to be taking property jointly with a minor child, obviously. Designating a beneficiary can be effective on some documents, and it is used in some documents, but things change, and often those beneficiary designations don't change. And there are a number of other reasons why designating a beneficiary just isn't an effective strategy moving forward, including there's generally no asset protection if you're designating a beneficiary as opposed to putting something into a trust. And if asset protection is something that you want, being able to protect assets from your heirs' possible divorce later down the road, then designating a beneficiary isn't going to be effective for that. Signing a will means that your assets are going to go through probate, and we talked about probate earlier. And then relying on a trust schedule also isn't effective. You really want to restate and amend and make sure that everything then is actually funded into the trust, which is something that I work with you on. So the only real foolproof way to avoid court is to fully fund a living trust with disability provisions. And that means retitling investment accounts. It means signing new signature cards at the bank, executing deeds to real property. It means transferring stock or board certificates, or if you own a small business, transferring your business ownership into the trust, assigning personal property to the trust. And then there is a use for beneficiary designations here, and that use for beneficiary designations varies a little bit between life insurance and retirement accounts, but the general gist of it is that you're going to use a beneficiary designation to direct things into the trust at some point, so that the provisions of the trust will take care of it for you. So this is something that I've talked about a little bit, talked about asset protection. And if you could have all of your assets right now protected, and you knew that they'd be protected through bankruptcy, through lawsuits, through a potential divorce, I think a lot of us would jump on that deal, right? That those assets would still be there on the other side of a bankruptcy or a lawsuit or whatever it was. But a lot of times for us, that would mean having to lose control of those assets. But actually there is a kind of a revolutionary new trust that's out there. It's called the Dynasty Trust, or a Lifetime Asset Protection Trust, that would allow heirs to actually receive assets, have control over them, but also have a lot of the asset protection that I was talking about at first. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. It's something that's pretty neat. So if you were interested in hearing about estate taxes, the federal estate tax exemption is over $22 million right now, and it's actually doubled for married couples. So it's over $44 million. It's very high right now. In Minnesota, the exemption is $3 million. That $3 million is not doubled for a married couple unless you do some planning. And then if you own assets in excess of $3 million, that's when the 12% estate tax would kick in Minnesota. And so you would start paying tax of 12% at that point. This is something that can be avoided. It's something that can generally be dealt with completely with some estate planning. So, so I encourage you, if you have concerns about the estate tax, I encourage you to talk to me about that. Another thing that you're going to want to look for when you do estate planning is making sure that your assets aren't lost to the State Department of Unclaimed Property. And this is actually another thing that I think is possible to do yourself. My mentor actually created a website. It's called Personal Resource Map. And in fact, I'll just put it right here in the chat right now. Personalresourcemap.com. And it is a place where you can catalog everything that you have so that nothing gets lost when you pass away. And this is something that is pretty dear to my heart because my grandfather, my dad's dad, I don't know if you knew I was going to tell a story from the family here, but my dad's dad passed away in 2001. And my parents did everything that they could to collect all of the assets. But unfortunately, something was missed and was still missing in 2019. And it was just some stock. And my guess is that the statements weren't coming to the house, or they didn't see the statements. And it's very easy to miss those sorts of things. And I know personally, I've turned on electronic statements for almost everything. And that's really the way that we used to find, while we were doing probate, what assets people had, what banks they used. We would look for the statements to see if they were banking at TCF or US Bank or whatever it was. But a lot of times now we don't even have that to be able to track from. So it's really effective to create a catalog of everything that you have, everything that you own, and be able to put that somewhere, kind of keep it as kind of like a scavenger hunt. So maybe you don't have the passwords for your bank account, but you have where the passwords are for your bank account so that people can access those if they need to. Something to think about. And again, if you go to that personalresourcemap.com, you'll be able to fill out an asset inventory that will keep everything together. Again, a nice do-it-yourself while you're sheltering in place here or social distancing. Another thing that the traditional estate model doesn't really capture is the values, the stories, the experiences that you've had during your life. And that was something that I saw missing from the small estate planning firm that I used to practice at. And it's something that I've added now to the estate planning that I'm doing right now. And I'm able to do that with something called a family wealth legacy interview. And it's a really neat process that I just ask some questions and we talk about some stories. We talk about some values, the things that are important to you, and go through those things and create a video that we're able to share with your heirs. And it's something pretty beautiful that I know a lot of people would appreciate. So what we've talked about how one size fits all planning can leave your family at risk. We've talked about document and form focused plans. It's kind of the traditional model of estate planning. We've talked about concerns about keeping your assets out of court or the Department of Unclaimed Property. So keeping them out of probate, and then making sure also that they stay with your heirs, that they don't get lost and into unclaimed property. We talked about guardianship issues, leaving your kids at risk of being in the care of strangers or someone you wouldn't want. And we also talked about the fact that the traditional model of estate planning only addresses financial assets. It doesn't necessarily address things like your values and your stories that you want to share. But I do things differently, and it all starts with something called a family wealth planning session, which is a 2-hour-long session where you'll get extremely financially organized. I'll have you fill out something similar to the personal resource map and or a personal inventory that inventories everything that you have and everyone that you love. And then we will talk about everything that you have and everything that you love in that family wealth planning session. We'll also guide you through making informed decisions, informed choices about what the right level of planning is for you. And you can see there are 3 levels of planning. They range from $2,000 to $8,000 on average. And those are flat fees. So you're not going to have to worry about getting a phone call or giving me a phone call and getting a bill in the mail 2 weeks later. You'll just know that you can call me anytime with any question, and it's already covered. It's already taken care of with the flat fee. You also know with certainty that your family is being taken care of, and that they'll be guided with love throughout your life in the event of your incapacity or death. And here I have an offer for you. The family wealth planning session, I generally value it at $750, but it's something that I'm happy to do for free if you're willing to do some homework before the session. It's something that I'm really happy to do for free because it means so much to people and it gives people so much. Another thing that I'm willing to do is take $250 off whatever trust or wealth plan you would like if you're willing to go ahead and take a jump, take a leap, and set up an appointment either today or from the email that I'll send you after this is over. So next steps, I am going to send you an email. There's going to be a survey in the email, and if you can just fill out that survey, you can remain anonymous if you'd like to, but I'm just looking for some feedback, looking at how I can improve this presentation and improve the guidance that I'm giving overall. I encourage you to schedule a family wealth planning session if you're interested. And again, you can see there's the certificate for $250 towards any planning that you want to do.